Miss Clark, it's great to have you here. Now, if you want to make me completely happy, just say you'll do my show.
When the camera lights go dark, Hollywood's dazzling glow often hides a much more disturbing reality. At the peak of the Golden Age, many stars who seemed to have it all were wrestling with secrets, scandals, and heartbreak behind the scenes. In this video, we're unraveling the hidden tragedies and unexplained endings that reveal the grim truth beneath that glamorous facade. Charles Boyer, When Grief is Unbearable. Grief can be a powerful final straw, as Charles Boyer's fate illustrates. Boyer dazzled audiences in films like Gaslight and Love Affair, receiving multiple Academy Award nominations. For decades, he sustained a robust career, and to outsiders, he seemed endlessly gracious, calm, and wise. But in August 1978, Boyer's wife of 44 years died after a grueling battle with cancer. Unable to imagine a future without her, he took a lethal dose of barbiturates just 2 days later, choosing to exit life on his own terms rather than endure the crushing loneliness. Such a swift reaction to personal tragedy underlined a brutal reality. For all the fame and fortune these stars accumulated, some heartbreaks were still too overwhelming to withstand. Ross Alexander, promising beginnings, swift end. Ross Alexander was once the personification of fresh-faced talent. He emerged from Brooklyn's theater scene and swiftly made his way to Hollywood, securing roles opposite luminaries like Errol Flynn. At just 29 years old, his star seemed destined to climb higher. But heartbreak and stigma lurked beneath his smiling exterior. Behind the scenes, Ross wrestled with unpayable debts and questions about his sexuality, at a time when such revelations could end careers instantly. The loss of his wife, who offed herself only a year into their marriage, shattered him entirely. Plunged into despair, Ross ended his own life with a firearm in January of 1937. To fans, it was an unthinkable finale for someone who embodied the energy of youth and potential, yet it illuminated how brutal Hollywood's golden age could be for those harboring personal conflicts that had no easy resolution. Many who knew him later recalled that his polite demeanor masked a constant sense of worry. He felt that time was running out, both financially and socially. In an era where studio heads orchestrated relationships and demanded conformity, he had nowhere to turn for genuine support. Ross's passing was one of the early warning signs that not all was golden under Hollywood's spotlight. George Reeves, the unanswered mystery of Superman. Despite Carl Dane's heartbreaking outcome, not every Golden Age figure left behind clear-cut reasons for their passing. George Reeves, famously known as the Man of Steel in the Adventures of Superman TV series, faced a murkier fate. He soared to popularity thanks to that iconic red cape. Yet behind closed doors, Reeves was reportedly frustrated and typecast. He found himself stuck in a role that overshadowed any other performance he tried to land. In June 1959, Reeves was found lifeless from a gun-related wound. Officials labeled it self-inflicted, but the situation was muddled by friends and fiancée Leonore Lemon, who were present in the home. Their inconsistent accounts sparked rumors of foul play, accidental shooting, or even orchestrated cover-ups. Although the official stance remains that George ended his own life, many have refused to accept that explanation, pointing to romantic entanglements, financial stress, and sudden arguments that night as pieces of a puzzle that never quite fit together. Even in death, the legacy of Superman refused to rest quietly. Countless films, books, and documentaries have examined George Reeves's final hours, illustrating how stardom can warp a person's public identity to the point where reality itself becomes hazy. In that sense, Reeves's story reveals an industry more interested in preserving myths than clarifying grim truths. Paul Byrne, Hollywood's early scandal, and the Jean Harlow connection. Long before George Reeves's passing stirred up conspiracy theories, Paul Byrne's demise had already proven how desperate Hollywood studios were to avoid bad press. A respected producer at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Byrne married blonde bombshell Jean Harlow in 1932, positioning him as the envy of many. Yet behind the scenes, rumors whispered of old flames, hidden marriages, and mental health concerns. Just 2 months after his wedding, Paul Byrne was discovered deceased in his Beverly Hills home from a firearm wound. A cryptic note alluding to regret and sorrow emerged, which authorities cited as proof that he ended his own life. But conflicting details, like a common-law wife who supposedly materialized in the days before his death, fueled speculation of murder, studio cover-ups, or both. MGM executives allegedly swept in to control the narrative, fearful that scandal would ruin Harlow's blossoming career and tarnish the studio's reputation. To this day, theories abound about who was truly responsible for Paul Byrne's death. The secrecy and hush-ups highlight how Tinseltown's golden age, for all its glitz, operated under a veil of intimidation, quick to silence any revelation that might threaten a star's box office draw. Directors from that era weren't spared from these dark undercurrents either. James Whale, a British filmmaker famed for shaping cinematic horror with Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and The Invisible Man, was a visionary who defined the genre. He filled his frames with a dreamy, chilling atmosphere that audiences still find mesmerizing. Privately, though, Whale fought a harsh battle against declining health and societal prejudice. He was openly gay at a time when that identity was vilified, and as the studio system tightened its conservative grip, Whale found it harder to secure projects. Strokes left him physically vulnerable, and he eventually penned a note indicating he yearned for release from his suffering. In May 1957, Whale drowned himself in his pool at age 67, leaving behind that haunting farewell. Even after his death, rumors circulated that foul play might have been involved, or that his note was forged. What remains certain is that one of horror's defining architects felt too isolated to endure. His passing points to the crushing pain that can follow when an artist finds their vision no longer valued and their personal life scorned by the era's rigid morality. Don Red Barry, the Western star who faded. For some, the shadows crept in through fading stardom and substance abuse. Don Red Barry exemplified that bleak slide. He blazed onto screens as a tough, sharp-shooting hero in B-westerns, charming fans throughout the 1940s. But once the Western's golden period waned, so did Barry's castings. With fewer roles came personal upheavals, run-ins with the law, and escalating problems with alcohol. By the 1950s, his shining brand had rusted. Divorce proceedings and bitter domestic disputes piled onto his growing list of troubles. In July 1980, Barry ended his own life with a gun at age 68, leaving behind a legacy that underscores how short-lived Hollywood's favor can be, especially for genre-specific stars. His final act also underscores the deeper tragedy of emotional and chemical dependencies that, when left unaddressed, can send once bright careers into heartbreaking spirals. Pete Duell, a light-hearted TV persona with a heavy burden. Pete Duell offered a gentle reminder that small-screen fame wasn't any safer than the big screen's illusions. Known for his role on Alias Smith and Jones, Duell carved out a friendly, appealing presence as the mischievous Hannibal Hayes. Privately, however, he battled depression and alcohol dependence. On New Year's Eve in 1971, just as the show was surging in popularity, Duell ended his own life with a firearm in his Hollywood Hills home. His girlfriend was inside the house at the time, waking to the sound of the shot. The tragedy rattled fans who had no inkling of Duell's spiraling condition. Executives scrambled to replace him, but audiences found it jarring to see a new face, wearing the same beloved character's hat. Duell's end highlighted how, beneath Hollywood's comedic or adventurous scripts, real people can be fighting profound emotional battles that no spin-off or recasting can fix. George Sanders, the cynical charmer who grew weary of living. Where Linda had comedic flair, George Sanders excelled at a sardonic, debonair on-screen presence. Having fled Russia with his British parents during the Revolution, Sanders adopted a biting wit that found perfect expression in films like All About Eve, even securing him an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Off-camera, though, he was equally known for his moody introspection. By 1972, with his health deteriorating and depression closing in, Sanders checked into a hotel in Spain and ingested a lethal amount of barbiturates. He left a note that reportedly said he was simply bored with life. The letter's cool detachment rattled those who knew him. but also fit the cultured, occasionally arrogant persona he'd cultivated. Sanders' final act underscored Hollywood's inability to fill the emotional voids its performers sometimes nursed. He, too, is remembered for a sophisticated veneer that masked a profound, ultimately lethal, disillusionment. Gig Young, the Academy Award winner's violent final chapter. But Don Barry's story pales next to the horrific climax of Gig Young's life. Born Byron Ellsworth Barr, Gig Young rose to acclaim as a charismatic leading man, eventually winning an Oscar for his performance in They Shoot Horses, Don't They? He possessed what looked like a glamorous existence, but in reality, multiple marriages crumbled under the weight of his alcohol dependence and erratic behavior. In October 1978, just weeks after marrying his fifth wife, a horrifying discovery was made. Both Gig Young and his spouse lay lifeless in their New York apartment. Industry insiders believed that a toxic mix of career frustration, depression, and substance abuse had dragged him into a mental abyss. How could a poised, polished performer unravel so dramatically? It remains a cautionary tale about illusions of stability in a profession that offers no real safety net. Philip Loeb, political persecution and despair. Not all stars were undone by personal demons alone. Some were cornered by the era's political tensions. Philip Loeb, known for his role in the early sitcom The Goldbergs, was an accomplished stage actor and educator. Beyond his performances, he passionately advocated for fellow actors, even pushing for better labor standards. But that same activism painted a target on him during the McCarthy era, when accusations surfaced about subversive activities. Once blacklisted, Loeb's steady work evaporated. He was forced out of the Goldbergs, a project he had helped shape, and encountered widespread rejection from the industry he loved. With mounting financial woes and no end in sight, he booked a room at New York's Taft Hotel in 1955 and took a fatal overdose of sleeping pills. The heartbreak of his story highlights the cutthroat environment of the Red Scare, where careers, and sometimes lives, were discarded over mere suspicion. In the aftermath, Loeb became a symbol of how fear-driven politics can poison creativity and compassion, stifling voices that once delighted the public. John Bowers, the alleged inspiration for A Star Is Born. As talkies swept in, more and more silent-era heroes found themselves stranded. One poignant example is John Bowers, a matinee idol who had starred in close to 100 films. Renowned for his roles alongside Douglas Fairbanks, Bowers was the picture of success until sound arrived and the offers stopped rolling in. November 1936, his body washed ashore near Santa Monica. Widely believed to have sailed out into the ocean to end his life, Bowers became something of a tragic legend. Many film historians insist that his downfall partly inspired the storyline of Norman Maine in A Star Is Born, the once celebrated actor who cannot adapt to the modern era and ultimately makes a fateful decision. Though studio heads tried to veil such grim realities from public view, Bowers' story spread throughout the industry, reminding all that stardom can be an unsteady, vanishing dream. Carl Dane. Success turned to public humiliation. Ross Alexander's story might have sent a warning shot, but Carl Dane's downfall underscored how the industry's shift could leave even established figures destitute. Dane discovered stardom during the silent era, capitalizing on his comedic talents and tall, memorable presence. Early audiences adored his roles in films like The Big Parade and The Son of the Sheik, where his expressive face and sharp comedic timing shone without the need for sound. Then the talkies arrived. Suddenly, that thick accent became an obstacle. Directors, mindful of box office risks, avoided giving him parts. Struggling to keep up with mounting bills and a fading reputation, Dane's last resort was running a hot dog stand near the very studio that had once celebrated him as a star. By 1934, he saw no escape from the humiliation and used a firearm to end his own life. Carl Dane's tragedy resonates even now. The transition from silent films to talkies was swift and merciless, leaving numerous once-beloved personalities out in the cold. Audiences often don't realize how razor-thin an actor's security can be when major technological changes reshape the industry overnight. Max Linder, early comedy pioneer, overwhelmed by darkness. Even before talkies reshaped Hollywood, the cinematic universe had other evolving storms. Max Linder, a pioneering French comedian, was one of the first international film stars whose influence touched icons like Charlie Chaplin. Often seen sporting a cane and top hat, his on-screen persona was a dapper gentleman navigating whimsical predicaments. Yet Linder's life was marked by physical and mental health issues exacerbated by his experiences in World War I. He and his wife entered a mutual pact to end their lives in 1925, leaving behind a 15-month-old daughter. News of his final choice devastated fans worldwide. The comedic genius, who had once made audiences roar with laughter, had ultimately found life too painful to endure. Linder's tragedy, overshadowed by the spectacle of 1920s Hollywood, nonetheless remains a stark tale of how even brilliant innovators can be lost when support systems fail. Brian Keith, battling illness and loss. While Pete Duell's struggles were rooted in emotional torment, Brian Keith's final chapter was shaped by physical pain and devastating personal tragedy. Best remembered for Disney's The Parent Trap and the sitcom Family Affair, Keith spent a lifetime entertaining viewers with his rugged warmth. In 1997, suffering from severe lung disease and grief over his daughter Daisy, who had offed herself just 2 months prior, Keith decided he couldn't take it anymore. He ended his life at his Malibu home, leaving family, friends, and a legacy of memorable performances behind. His choice once again revealed how the glimmer of the spotlight can do little to cushion private heartbreak and ailing health. Sometimes the combination of physical decline and emotional devastation proves too heavy a burden to carry. Richard Farnsworth, the stuntman turned actor who faced terminal pain. Richard Farnsworth's story is one of quiet dignity that still concluded tragically. He began as a stuntman in the 1930s, lending his grit and resilience to countless westerns before evolving into an accomplished character actor. He earned Oscar nominations for Comes a Horseman and The Straight Story, winning hearts with his understated presence. But in 2000, advanced prostate cancer left him in relentless agony and robbed him of mobility. Farnsworth chose to end his suffering with a firearm at his New Mexico ranch. To those who knew him, the act felt more like a heartbreaking resignation than a despairing meltdown. Despite a supportive circle of friends, Farnsworth saw no other way to cope with a condition that was rapidly stealing every facet of his independence. His passing highlights a broader dialogue about end-of-life decisions and the intense physical pain that can push an individual beyond their limits. John Hall, the swashbuckling adventurer, overwhelmed by disease. John Hall, known for dashing roles in adventure films like The Hurricane and various Arabian fantasies, dazzled audiences in the 1930s and 1940s with his energetic performances and cinematic good looks. Over time, though, Hollywood's tastes shifted, and Hall found it harder to land lead roles as new faces took center stage. By 1979, he was battling terminal bladder cancer, a condition so excruciating that no treatment seemed to help. The star, once a symbol of robust vitality, chose to end his life rather than continue enduring unbearable pain. Like Farnsworth, Hall's decision reflected an individual grappling with terminal illness under a spotlight that offers fame, but no real map for handling such personal catastrophes. His exit closes another chapter in the annals of Hollywood's darker side, a place where outward heroics on screen could never fully reflect the backstage despair. The lingering echoes of the Golden Age. Hollywood's Golden Age is still cherished as a time of jaw-dropping glamour and epic creativity. But the tragedies we've just uncovered reveal an undeniable truth. No amount of fame, money, or adoration can fully protect someone from despair. These luminaries, once the envy of millions, struggled with secrets they had to bury or threats they couldn't outrun. Some endured rumors of murder or cover-ups that persist to this day, while others quietly slipped away under the burden of illness or grief. In remembering their stories, we offer them more than the box office acclaim they once craved. We give them compassion for their humanity. Behind every spotlight is a person fighting an unseen battle. If there's a lesson to be gleaned, it's that mental health support, understanding, and open dialogue have always been needed, but were tragically absent for many of these stars. So, the next time you watch an old Hollywood classic, pause for a moment to recognize that those shimmering icons on your screen carried invisible wounds. Their struggles remind us that true empathy lies in looking beyond the curated glitz, seeing the fragile heart beating beneath, and acknowledging that even the grandest legends sometimes break under pressure. The stories of these unforgettable figures live on, urging us to keep searching for a more compassionate way to celebrate art and the individuals who create it, without sacrificing their well-being at the altar of entertainment.